All right. I'm going to call the September 8th, 2025 Board Finance Subcommittee meeting to order. The time is 3:30. We will take public comment on non-agenda items and agenda items. Is there any public comment?
No comment.
Seeing none, we're going to recess to closed session. I don't have a gavel. Okay. Back to the go ahead and reconvene to open session at 4:17. There's no reportable action from closed session. Move to item 4, discussion action. Item A, which is discussion on district enrollment and capacity update. I do not see Stacy, so Emmanuel, I presume you're presenting?
Yeah. Stacy will be here in just a minute.
Yeah, Stacy have to be off campus for a
She
second.
said she's in the Zoom.
Okay.
Well, we have a presentation of Cheryl and get it up there. And
Yeah, I see.
I'm promoting her to a panelist. So
Perfect.
give her a minute.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, Stacy's downstairs.
Yeah, that's why she's like, in person, I'm on the Zoom. I'm like, great one.
All right.
You want me to come upstairs? I can. Doesn't
I
matter.
think you're
I
fine.
think we're okay.
Go ahead and start the
It's
presentation.
fine. Yeah.
All right, I don't have a formal PowerPoint,
Mhm.
but we can go over what we observed for the first 10 days of school as it pertains to enrollment and attendance. If you want to see documents, they were attached for the board agenda for Wednesday. So they are going to be exactly the same. There's going to be nothing different. So as you know, every year for the first 10 days, we physically count the students that are present in the classrooms at a certain time of day. And what we ask elementary schools is to count students at the beginning of the day, and the secondary schools the period before lunch. This is something that the Ed Code mandates us to do, and we did that for the first 10 days of school. So we have counts for students that were actually present, sitting in a desk from August 13th all the way to August 16th. Sorry, 26th.
26.
Yeah, I have it here, but I read it wrong. Overall, we found that on average, right, because as you know, every day the attendance is different. Some days you have more, sometimes you have less students, depending on the day of the week, pretty much. So on average, over these 10 days, we had present 11,077 students. That is, and then, if we average this over the first 10 days, we can say that's give or take 41 students. So if we were to go today, and if I were to bet how many students we were going to see present, I would say 11,077, give or take 41, right? Actually, on average, I also ran the ADA reports. We are at about 11,100. So we are right on track to where we were here.
And that's slightly above what our projections were.
Slightly above. Again, projections are kind of like inexact science. On the LCFF ADA that we used for our budget projections, we projected 11,068 students present. So I would say we are right tracking, right? We are off 9 students, if I do my math correctly. We are, I would say, of 9 students of 11,000 is what, 0.1% off, which, or we are 99.90%, correct. So we did pretty good, I think. So the projections are tracking exactly like we were projecting. So that's pretty much it. Any questions about this? I don't know if there is
But,
a few highlights that we can make.
yeah, we didn't see a huge shift compared to what we projected for seventh and eighth,
Yeah.
so we didn't see a big impact there. Aligned pretty closely
Yeah.
with what we had anticipated with the move to the the junior programs on
Exactly.
the high school campuses.
We are seeing a slight decline in the 9-12 enrollment.
Mhm.
Again, these, I think, is expected given our long-term projections that, our demographic study that we experienced, that we saw about now 2-3 years ago, where the secondary district was going to be the most impacting. And then we had an increase in TK enrollment. As you know, this year, the state is the first year where we are going to roll out universal TK as a grade. And we have seen a big pickup. And so we have more enrollment in TK as we were expecting. So I guess that's a highlight.
Stacy has some slides that we shared with the ad hoc that she can go ahead and show.
And Stacy, as you're pulling those slides up, I just want to make sure I'm reading the 7th grade numbers correctly. So our projections were 948. It looks like our enrollment's been consistently over 1,000. So it looks like we're over 100 students above what we were projecting for 7th grade.
That's correct. And if you look at those LCFF projections, enrollment is the number of students that we have enrolled. And then what we actually get funded on is the ADA column, right? And so, and that is, an interaction between that and the actual attendance rate that we observe. But then what you want to do is to compare the ADA column with the average. And you can see there that we have about 120 students above what we would expect present, right? And that could be both over enrollment or better attendance rate, right? And so it could be one of the two.
And for
The other thing that the schools have been doing that it kind of coincides with the students who are, oh, there we go. There we go. Can you see these?
Yes.
yeah,
Are they
Small.
big enough or should, here, I'm gonna share it differently. I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
sharing. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna open this. There we go. So the other thing that the schools have been doing right now is what's called the missing student tracker. So after the start of the there we go. After the start of the first days of the actual student count, we begin, this is the actual student count that Emmanuel was just sharing. You can see by grade level over here, what were the LCFF projections, what were the staffing allocations, and on day 10, because if I show you the whole thing, it's so big that you won't be able to read it. But by day 10, how many students were enrolled and how many students were present? So you can just kind of track, you see that TK increase. That was a nice increase, but then you can see that there are some grades where the actual enrollment was about spot on, like 468 to 456. There are others where the enrollment was a little lower, like in grade 5. Others where the enrollment was slightly higher, like in, well, the TK in the kindergarten, where you're seeing those were a little bit higher. And then down here at the bottom, you can see what were our LCFF projections, what was the average daily attendance ratio and our ADA, and how does that compare across those averages. In addition, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before we move on, just I want to point out that staffing allocations, if you go back, and this is something that's probably in the weeds, but when you look at the staffing allocations, those exclude the students that are in a specialized special education program and just include students that are served by general education because staffing is done differently from general education and special education. So when you look here, staffing allocation, see how we are about, 400 students less than what we would have enrollment numbers. And that is by design because we are taking out students that are served by specialized special education programs that are staffed differently, right? And so I know this kind of like, when you start looking at all these columns, everything gets a little bit complicated, but
So in essence, that doesn't mean that we have,
understaffing.
that we're understaffed.
Yes, it means that
That
for
means-
general education, those are the counts we use and we kind of track, and those exclude the special education program students that are usually in shelter, like shelter class or special day classes, and non-public school students that don't, we pay for but don't enroll, or,
And so then the second part that that staff started working on during that second week of school, during that 10-day actual student count, is trying to find out where the missing students are. These were the students who were consecutively absent. They never showed up at the school, or they may not have shown up until day 4 or day 5, and we hadn't heard anything from the parents. And so how many of students at each campus were considered missing? And what has the school been doing in order to find them? Because we need to ensure that especially students who are served by specialty programs like foster youth, students under the McKinney-Vento Act, or special education students, they're never dropped. We only transfer them to their next school because these are students whose right to education are protected, and we have to know where these students are. So the schools have been working as teams to either contact families, do home visits, like using emails and phone calls to try to find where they are, find out if the student has moved to a new area or has been staying home due to illness or injury. And the schools have been doing a wonderful job of finding the missing students. So that's that second part of not only who's here, but who isn't and where are they?
And Stacy, my recollection is that our numbers do not include anyone. Every number we have up there for enrollment, they've attended at least one day of school at this point, right?
Yes, we have reconciled all of the no-shows that we can.
So all those numbers, there's no numbers in there that would be
it's
phantom numbers.
it's possible. So I know that I have these 2 students that I can think of that are out of the country. They are trying to come back, but they're
Oh, we've communicated with.
exactly.
We
So
know.
we are in
We know where
communication with the
they
are. We know that
family,
they're
right?
in.
They tell us, hey, I'm coming back, but I don't know when, right? And they're trying to come back. Those are still here. They are not present, but they are still enrolled. We don't keep students on the records if they are not here, right? We also get notifications from other districts of what's called a concurrent enrollment error, that they tell us the student is enrolled with us, but I also see we claimed it or is still enrolled at San Jose City Schools. And so we usually try to reconcile. So there is a lot of like checks, besides this work, there is also some background between us talking with other districts and try to resolve concurrent enrollments if they are in California. Of course, if you move out of state or out of the country, there isn't the same process, and that's where the missing comes in.
But then we wouldn't have seen them for the 10 days and we would have already.
Exactly, right? And so, and usually we try to make contact, and we have quite a few students that have moved out of the area, and we get confirmation from either a neighbor or the parents directly that they won't be attending anymore because they moved out of the state.
And I know we talk a lot about kind of our highest need group of students that may have been to 1 or 2 classes, but for whatever reasons, family, medical, or whatever, they haven't been to a lot of those. But the size of that's a relatively condensed number. What is that top, like?
The top tier. So
But how many? Yeah, if you do, yeah. Then
yeah,
I can get
so
confusing a lot of time talking about them, and then they'll be like, 100 students or something.
Right, so we've reconciled, and then what we are continuing to do now is work with families of children whose attendance, that we know that they are in our district. We know that they are enrolled in our schools, but their attendance may be funky. They may not be attending regularly. They may have too many absences due to illness or medical appointments, or they may have cuts. So we are starting the process of monitoring daily attendance as well. That is something that usually starts in early September because we need at least those first 10 days to be tracking students moving from one school to the next, students who are transitioning from our district to another district. And that's where we start to pay attention to daily attendance. And starting next week, we will be sending our first notifications out about students whose attendance is problematic enough that the families need their first level of warning.
Yeah. And Stacy, just to add a little bit, this will be a collaboration between the school sites and the district office, right? We do the notifications, but the school sites do the first really 2, 3 interventions and contacts with the families, because we know it's better when somebody from the school site reaches out to a family and say, hey, we've noticed that you have been absent for more than 3 days. Is there anything that you need, right? Rather than a letter from Stacy or me that, it doesn't have the same personal connection that we know is important.
Right. And we have transitioned that to going through the resource called Parent Square because it allows for ease of translation services. It allows families to reply back in their preferred language without any barrier to communication. And it allows us to be able to monitor not only when did we send that notification to the parent, but when did they open it and read it? So it gives us some information that our former version, using just paper and pencil and sending things with a stamp on it, we just didn't have that same level of granularity and that same level of connection with families. We are also working on using Parent Square as a means of searching those students who might be in the margins with their attendance and pulling them back into positive attendance before they get into the chronically absent. And this is another resource that is brand new through Parent Square. It's called the Attendance Plus module. And our schools are right now beginning to use this. It's a nice tool because it will tell you at a glance how many of your families are not contactable based on the personal information they've provided, and how many students fall into the different tiers of attendance so that we can be intervening personally with students, celebrating those who have great attendance, and helping move the needle for those that are on the margin before they become chronically absent or habitually truant. That's what we have to share.
And this is on the revenue side, right? How do we increase revenue by getting students in classrooms?
Yeah.
And then another piece of the conversation that we'll talk about a little bit on Wednesday is impact to sites, where we've seen increased enrollment in, and we're over-enrolled at some schools, or over-enrolled from what we expected versus some other schools are under-enrolled. And so we have a lot of shifting that's happening with staff to balance those classes, to balance, we've had to transfer or again, shift schedules. And one of the things that we have to look at is capacity of sites. And so while we have TKs planned and in process for some of our sites, that still in some areas is problematic in that the number of students who, with the shifting of the boundaries that we've created, we still have sites where students are not going to, some schools, and others are really busting at the seams. And that even with additional TK classrooms or things that we may have some problems there and need to look at potentially adjusting some boundaries again.
Yeah, so let
And
me see.
that's in addition, because we're already planning to adjust our boundaries for feeder districts and feeder schools through the conversation for the secondary. So you're referencing the elementary district.
We're referencing the elementary because we also have Steel Lane closing at the end of this year. And so that is something that we'll need to be very mindful of. And there may need to be conversation about shifting some of those boundaries to be different than what we had expected based on where students are actually living.
So let me see if I can share my screen. So that we have a common reference, and we can all look at the same documents. I know this is a little bit small, but what I work with facilities with Eric Oden to do like a room use census, if you wish. So here we have how many rooms we have for elementary, middle, and high school, and the current use, the building that we expect, and the potential rooms that we can expect having free for next school year. So let's do elementary first, and then we can go into talking about secondary. So for elementary, as you can see here, the facility use is pretty okay overall. We just have two sites that are somewhat impacted on use overall, and is Burbank and Proctor Terrace. Both of those schools are at capacity, and we are currently using spaces that weren't classrooms or identified as classroom on the FPM for educational support needs. So as I was doing this, I spoke with all the principals, all the elementary school principals, and what they told me is like, we have classrooms that are dedicated, for a teacher and students, right? And it's what you would imagine to be a classroom, right? But then we also have other spaces that we can call them like educational support. They are not like a traditional classroom, but they are needed to help classrooms function. So that, for example, a space to have a music teacher to host students when they do prep release, right? RSP teachers to meet with their students and provide RSP services, rainy day PE. So ideally, we want those, the educational supports to meet in a classroom space, right? However, if classroom space is not available, we find other ways to meet. So that's why here you see other spaces used as a classroom but not classroom. And those are, especially at Burbank and Proctor Terrace, is that we are using, for example, the NPR as their PE space, right? That's not necessarily a classroom, but it works out, right? So when we start thinking about space and impact, we might have issues, like that. Now thinking about long term, right, and start, doing planning is, do we want to address this, space restriction by new construction? Or do we want to address this by, moving the boundaries? As you can see here, for example, we have some space in Lincoln. So potentially we could think about moving those attendance boundaries west, right, from Proctor to Burbank and from Burbank to Lincoln. That would create spaces just by moving students where they attend, right? Another thing that might be is to look at, school lots and see where construction might happen. My understanding is that we have a lot of space at Burbank. In the back, Eric told me, I've never been.
As far as the
There is-
land, not the buildings,
The
but the
land, right?
yes.
So we have a lot of space on that lot to add. So potentially, right, in 3 years from now, right, with planning within FPM, that could be something that we could identify as a potential expansion site. And we don't need to adjust the attendance boundaries, we can just expand.
Does this table contemplate the TK buildings at Monroe, Cesar Chavez, the move of French to Santa Rosa Middle,
No,
Hidden Valley?
that one, no. So the only buildings that I have here are building in progress. Those are the buildings that currently the board has approved,
Okay.
which my understanding is adding 6 classrooms at both James Morrow and Allen Lehman net, is 3 and 5 because to add, we're actually taking away.
Yeah.
So net, right, is 3 new classrooms available at Allen Lehman after we remove the 3 portables, and 5 at James Morrow after we remove 1 portable. And then we have 12 classrooms at Pioneer. That is the new L building that I think was approved last board meeting, right? And so that is the additional 12, and it's reported here.
So there's a few moves that we know are coming, but we haven't approved them yet, so, you know.
Yes,
Or there's
Like
not
Proc- like
where
once
they
it-
are
yeah.
in construction.
Like the
not yet.
improvements to Hidden Valley and Proctor, we don't know what they're fully gonna be yet, 'cause you have to
Yes.
receive the study.
exactly. So
Yeah.
those, right, I know we have plans, but we are waiting for that. I don't know where that will fall, right? And so these are not here because this is like a plan.
Based on
fine, I
what
just
we
wanna-
know at this point.
I just wanna know,
Right
yeah,
now,
yes.
right, because we need to start planning and say, will we have space for the still lane students, right? And
Okay.
potentially is maybe yes, right, with some,
Within the elementary numbers, and last questions, I know we need to move the agenda a bit. Within the elementary numbers, are we aware if this is attendance boundaries or if this is transfers?
that's a good point, right? And it's difficult to know because I know Stacy and I have approved every elementary transfer. We haven't denied anybody last year. Elementary is also tough because usually students stay at a site for 9 years, right? From
Yeah.
TK to 6th grade. So it's 8 years, sorry. And so we are not just dealing with last year transfers, we are dealing with transfers that were approved over the last 8 years. And so, yes, there might be some transfers. It's kind of tough to say, to display students that have been there since, kinder, and now we're in, 4th grade and say we don't have a space for you here anymore. We can look a little bit more into that. It's really difficult though to disentangle like last year transfers or historical transfers.
I just anticipating the future conversations around
Yeah.
this information will,
Yeah.
because the other thing we need to contemplate is, we also have Comstock as an available elementary school campus as a consideration.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at this all, if we're gonna have the elementary boundary conversation, we need to know whether it's transfers or if it's.
Now, right, when we think about the Comstock and especially where it's located, it's very, very close to Lehman, right? And so it's really difficult to make the attendance boundary work, right? And so Comstock could be used with some creative ways to think about that space and how we could serve as an elementary school. But yeah, maybe that's a discussion for another
So
day.
let me just summarize this out. Our enrollment numbers from the 10-day count were at and slightly above our projections,
Yeah.
so we do not have a downward concern. And of importance to me is seeing the 7th grade numbers being above where we were projecting them, considering the moves that we've made. So I'm seeing very positive information, and we can rely on our budget projections. We have the challenge of higher than anticipated attendance within some of our elementary schools. And so in addition to the secondary boundary conversation that we're already planning on having,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to have some discussions around the elementary boundaries, and that'll be coming to us. We have 45 minutes, so I'm gonna move the agenda.
Yes.
But if that summary is consistent for everyone.
I think,
Yes.
Roxanne, do you have any other questions?
Okay.
Then, let's go ahead and move the discussion to item B, spending and hiring freeze. I guess this is Dr. Vicki's hands.
It's Vicky, Luz, and I don't know if Kelly knew she was on the agenda for this.
Kelly did. I let her know she was trying to do some catch up. So I let her know that I would try to cover this as best I can.
Okay, thank you. I just realized, I was like, oh, now that I'm not in that loop anymore.
Why don't you go? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay to start?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I can't see the room and I can't see faces. Okay. So a couple of just data nuggets, given where we are. So one, on the spending side, so not the hiring side, but on the spending side that we do for books and supplies and for services and contracts. We've got Kelly and team are working on establishing together essentially a norms and guidelines cheat sheet for folks to get all the folks who put in requisitions sort of on an even playing field. So they all step into making an ask in the same place. So for example, if someone is looking for furniture, to know the first thing you do if you're looking for some furniture is you're going to check in with Kelly and Eric to see if we might have it available somewhere else. If you're looking for technology, here's what we want to do first. It's essentially to avoid any expense that we can. And so she's working on that piece. We've also pulled some samples from folks from other districts that have put together spending freezes to help us think through what that might look like for us. I think I mentioned the last time, I'm a fan of setting an actual target, having a real number that we're working from, as opposed to an elusive, we're going to try to spend less. I'm also a fan of when we set those targets to actually pull the dollars from the budget so they're not available for spending. Those are both hard things to do. They can be hard on staff, but if we're going to really try to save some dollars in the current year, that's going to be one of those places, it'll be one of those adjustments that we'll consider making. Now that we've closed books, for me, I have a lot of appreciation for the fact that books are closed, because it's an additional data nugget for us to look at to see where, how much did we plan on spending on books and supplies, and where did we land? How much did we plan on spending on services and contracts, and where did we land? And then to compare that to where we are with the current year, so that again, I don't like to think of budgeting either optimistically or conservatively. I want it to be real, so that we can be, real about the decisions we need to make, because there are going to be some hard ones that are coming up. And so I expect to have a spending freeze proposal for the team to consider in the next month. It'll go to cabinet first, of course, for us to look at together to see what we can do. Sorry.
I have a question for you on, and this may just be the language, because I think what I'm hearing you say is the same way I think about it, is it's not so much a spending freeze as much as it's what can we cut from spending that we actually don't need versus what do we actually need in order that we need to do even if we had a freeze and be an exemption. So it's really how much money can we actually cut from the budget for spending.
The desired outcome of a spending freeze is current year savings.
Right.
That's
but
why
what I mean, but isn't that a cut? What it really is what do we not need to actually buy this year?
Yes.
Instead of, because I feel like a freeze, we're going to have things that we need to buy, right? Like we have to replace something that needs to actually be replaced. Mm-hmm. So is it more of like a let's true it up, everyone take any cushion that they put in there, which I know there's not a lot, but it's really a come to reality conversation about what do we actually need to purchase this year?
So it's one and the same. So a spending freeze can be very, and just it's not as tangible as I think we need it to be, to just say, hey, everybody, do your best to try to spend less. And so I think to what your point is, I'm trying to make it a little bit more concrete, to have actual targets, actual dollars. And in those cases where we can identify, for example, if we have a contract in the bud that we budgeted for to do A and B, we'll meet with the budget manager and say, do we really need to do this contract that we had scheduled to do A and B? Can we instead punt it a year? So can we defer it a year? Or can we have it do just A instead of A and B? And so looking to make those actual adjustments in the budget to show some of those savings come first interim. Oftentimes school districts will do spending freezes that sound more like, hey, everybody, let's tighten our belts and try to spend less. I'm not sure we're in a place where we can just try to tighten our belts and spend less. I think we need to actually identify those places where we're going to spend less, remove the dollars from the budget so that they're no longer available for spending.
So we're still gonna spend on we still need copy paper, but we don't need new tables, like that sort of differentiation.
And do we need 10 pallets of copy paper, or do we need that we're going to be using 5 rather than keeping a lot of extra stock on hand? Because that's something that we can get a quick turnaround on. So that's something that purchasing has worked on, is with, basically setting up preferred item lists that are very quick turnaround so that we don't have to keep things in
So we can
stock.
spend down our inventory, move our inventory to liquid.
Yes, I had one principal who said, I've told everybody that we're to be hungry caterpillars and going through our supplies. So it's like, yes,
I read that book to my son last night for his 3rd birthday.
that, rather than just ordering something.
So Louis, I appreciate the direction of specific numbers and cuts. When do you think we'll have those specific numbers, and what is the order of magnitude on the spending, not the hiring? But what's the order of magnitude on the spending side that you think we'd be looking at? Are we in the 5s, the 6s?
As I look at the difference between estimated actuals and unaudited actuals, I can see we came in quite a bit lower on both books and supplies and I'm sorry, not books and supplies, but on services and operating expenses. And so there was a difference there between what we were planning and then where we actually landed. And so the goal is to tighten that up now instead of at closing, right? So just refining the budget. Well, the first big refinement will come at first interim. But before then is when I expect to actually be able to implement some iteration of a spending freeze. So I think short answer to your question, within probably 4 to 6 weeks, we'll have some sort of process in place where we're starting to cut away at some of those dollar amounts that are in the budget. And with each of them, just to be really clear, like if there's something in the budget, then we're going to be making a choice. So if we had a plan for a contract, figuring out what was that plan. And then one of my questions is, do we have to do it this year? Can we wait a year? So it's savings for the 1 year, knowing that we'll still have to do it next year. But if we can wait a year, I'll take a year to hold on to that cash. And then figuring out what are some of those things that we can do without. In that conversation, there are also some other pieces that are coming up with some of the expenditures that we have over the years been able to charge to our bond funds. And so as we're looking at those items, continuing to ask ourselves the question, is the bond fund the most appropriate place for this, right? Because we have facility needs. And so really taking this opportunity to push ourselves, or like what is really intended to be paid for out of the general fund, and making sure that if it is operational and its core, it's being covered by the general fund. So we're not just moving dollars around to be able to pay for the things that we otherwise want to be able to pay for out of the general fund.
So I appreciate the specificity of some of the language. I think the word freeze is not actually what we should use. I think it should be cuts or deferrals.
Yeah.
Because if we're deferring in a year, we should be cognizant of that. And if we're cutting it, then let's call it that. If we use freeze, I think it means different things to different people. Mm-hmm. The one area that I really want to know about if something is being cut or deferred is it going to add to any future like deferred maintenance is always something I worry about. So is there a future cost, not just a delay in implementation associated with it? But that would, for the spending side of this conversation, that would be my big ask, is that we are very clear that we're deferring in a year, we're deferring it, and it's going to be 140% more expensive. Or is it deferring in a year and it's going to be 100% plus some inflation? Which is a different conversation. So
yeah, absolutely.
Roxanne, do you have any other questions?
No. When did you call me?
After we talk to Donald. Oh. Excellent. You want to talk hiring freeze?
Yeah. So Vicki and I have not talked hiring freeze yet, but I will say now that we're past the 10-day count and all of the tremendous work that Vicki and team have done, I think we can sort of see where our next steps might be in that, given that we're already in a place where cabinet reviews every single position that comes through.
So does that mean that there is not a lot of opportunities within that concept, or does it mean that there is a lot of opportunities in that concept and we'll hear more in the future?
I would say we're pretty tight on that already, but one of the things, is it nice or is it necessary? Is it necessary to continue operating, or does it just make things a little more comfortable? And so, that's.
Yeah,
If you wanna-
there's still, and I'm sure you may or may not have heard from SRTA about the counselors and the counselors feeling overwhelmed. They, we did the ratios, and almost every single school is exactly spot on for 400 to 1 in comprehensive
That's why they're feeling
counselors.
overwhelmed. Yeah.
And,
That's
but
in
that's their
contract.
contractual
No, I'm
amount.
just saying,
Yeah.
but it's at the
So,
max,
right.
so, yeah.
And the only place where there's a little bit of difference is Santa Rosa Middle School is down 0.2, which they were allocated but didn't hire for. And Santa Rosa High School is over about 0.37. So one person from Santa Rosa High School can do 1 day a week, take on a caseload of 80 at the middle school, and that will make them perfect. So,
But it explains why we're hearing it, because that's,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have not historically been
right,
all the way up at those. So.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So similar to spending freezes, I have the same philosophy that hiring freezes, they're not strategic, tend to cost more than they save. But are positions that we don't have filled that we could be looking at cutting? Or are there ones that we could be looking at deferring for a year with the same kind of logic that we were just talking about?
Yeah, so we've been looking at that in terms of school site staff. There's a couple where we need to look at the ratios, but we didn't fill teacher positions specifically at elementary. What we did is we said, okay, if you believe all these kids are going to show up, go ahead and build your schedule, but we're going to put subs in those positions until we see that the kids actually showed up. And so that helped us out a lot because we weren't hiring people that we were then gonna not, need. So we do have to hire, I think it's 4 or 5 elementary teachers. But that's good. Everybody is like right at their numbers. And then the ratios, like Luz was saying earlier with the overages, the only overages that we have are like the absolutely necessary, no way to avoid it kind of overages. But, and then for classified, I think right now we're looking at custodial and seeing if we can get some of the share paid through the extended programs, through after school programs, summer school programs that, and that might not necessarily be a freeze, but it will allow us to supplement because we're under ratios in custodial.
So, for example, over the our staffing was hired based on operating schools during the day. We have now expanded learning opportunities and all of these things that our schools are being operated an additional 30 days per year at 9 hours a day, plus an additional 3 hours or so during the school year. And so that increases the load on our custodians, but we have not increased custodial services. And so we're seeing that in how it's being felt by the custodians. So it may be a combination of an opportunity for us to realize in savings when we look at that fiscal stabilization, but also an opportunity that we need to look at what's appropriate for staffing for cleaning. What do we need to do and find that balance between what's nice and what's necessary and the appropriate funding source to match.
So I feel like we're at the point where we know what's essential and what's not essential. I'd like to see us as the committee recommend to the board with staff fleshing this out, a freeze or cut plan for non-essential staff. I think we need to take that action and bring it to the board at this stage. Obviously, with it being fleshed out as to what that non-essential means, but with the 10-day counts, knowing that we hit our projections, knowing that we properly staffed and we were in the right place with the elementary teachers, it's time to take that pause and make sure that we're not spending more. So is that something that we'd be in agreement on recommending to the board for discussion?
And even if it's us bringing to the board
Right.
here's how we are addressing this, I don't know that it,
In concept,
Yeah.
I mean, but I think we need to be elevating the conversation to the board because of where we're at.
absolutely.
I think for me to be able to say to the board, I am recommending a freeze, I would need to know more specifically what that freeze meant.
I'm suggesting we recommend the conversation going to the board
Okay.
with the plan.
Yes,
So we're not
That makes
recommending the specifics because we don't have them, but
bringing the conversation forward.
we're saying that it
Yes.
should go to the board for conversation, and the next viable meeting for that is probably before this committee meets again. So, instead of coming back here, I think this should go to the board.
All right.
Anything else on these two topics that I'd like to not have to talk about again? Let me get back to the proper screen. Oh, lovely. C, discussion, preview of the 2024-25 unaudited actuals. Could have just led with that. Luce?
Yes. All right, so I'm going to start really high level for us. So this is the point in time where this is essentially the last time that we will have worked on our books, right? So when we close books, that's our last action as a school district on our financials. At this point, we'll take it to the board will take action, and then we will hand it off, right? So then our auditors will come in, and they're the third party independent from us who will be having that final review. And so this is our last time of looking at the financials. Do I have the ability to share?
Yes. You should.
There it is. I'm going to just show a quick preview of a couple of slides from that are planned for, going to try to anyway, that are planned for Wednesday. Just high level. When we look at this is general fund. So high level, we are ending the year a couple of $1 million in a better position than when we had anticipated. So it's an improvement from where we were last. So I want to just highlight here one thing that caught my eye. I always tell boards and superintendents that if we're going to be good, like just stellar at one thing on the finance side, the one thing we want to be stellar at is projecting our local control funding revenue. It's our primary source of funding, and we need to be excellent at it. And this shows me Joel and team are excellent at it. So this, my hats off goes to Joel and team on that. And revenue looks like it's pretty tight, right? We're ending the year just a smidge better than where we thought we were going to at estimated actuals. But it's an improvement. And then on the expenditures, yep.
Sorry to interrupt you, but so I keep a mental number in my head, right? I got the 11 million structural, the X amount for reserves. I'm thinking 15, 16 that we're coming up with. When you show me this 2 million that we are up on from where we were at last year, am I taking that number out of? Is that like one money that we now have in our reserve that we didn't have before? I just want to, like, how am I thinking about that number?
Yeah, so here, I'm just going to go to the end. So our ending fund balance was previously at estimated actuals. This number here was a -3 million. And now we are at a -1 million. So that's the $2 million improvement. we are still short of where we need to be able to make our 3% reserve. So we're not making our 3% reserve in 24-25. We would need an additional $9.2 million to make that 3% reserve. And this is $2 million better than it was at estimated actuals. So it's an improvement, and I don't want to lose sight of that. So we are better off than where we were at estimated actuals. And
So that 11 million number is now 9.2 million, and then we still have the 3 to 4. Okay.
Yeah,
I appreciate
we still have to deal with 25-26 where we have the structural deficit. Right. And just a quick reminder, right? So we did see, as of the 45-day revise, again, Joel and team did a nice job of developing the budget to not count on anything that was questionable. At 45-day revise, by the time that the state took action, we saw an improvement there. Think of it's like $5 million-ish. So we still have a ways to go. But it's definitely, we're moving in the right direction with the 45-day revise. We're moving in the right direction with the unaudited actuals. And then we'll continue to move in the right direction with the first interim as we look at tightening some of those budgets so that those dollars aren't available to spend if we think we can either punt it or decrease it. Whatever adjustments we can make, we're going to make. Yeah, so it's really general fund that I wanted for us to go over today. I guess the only other point I will make here is you'll see we are sitting on a balance here, restricted dollars, about 15 million. Those are legally restricted dollars, right? That they have their restrictions. I like to think of them as dollars that have, I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see anybody's faces. Okay, so it's about $15 million that's sitting there with strings attached. So they're real dollars. Our real students generated them, and they have strings attached to them. One of the items that's on my mind that will be a part of the fiscal solvency plan is something along the lines of figuring out how do we maximize the best use, the highest and best use of those restricted dollars. And so looking to ensure that where we're having some carryover right now, looking to tighten that up so that we're spending in the current year the dollars that are generated by the kids who we're serving in the current year, right? That is the idea. They have higher needs, and so they generate these restricted dollars, and we should be spending them on those kids who are generating them. And so looking to see how do we tighten that, because while that balance is there, I would submit to you we could do better at being able to spend on the current year kids and ensuring that we're making those best use of those restricted resources. So we don't have, as an example, carryover in Title I. Title I is one of those that's for me a little bit of a sore spot. When I see carryover in Title I, my first question is always, did you close the opportunity gap? Because that really is the only time I should be seeing carryover in Title I, unless we have a solid plan on how we were going to use it intentionally. But short of that, we want to make sure we're making the best use of those restricted dollars.
Are these restricted dollars things that we're doing and not properly charging to the restricted fund? Or are they things that we weren't doing that we should have been doing for the students?
I think it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, so I don't know enough yet, but I think between like Lisa and Joel, I can't see Joel's face, but they could probably speak to like where they might see opportunities on how we can tighten up some of those pieces.
Yeah, part of the issue, and I'll let Joel speak to it more, but part of the issue has been for so long we had multiple streams that could be spent on the same things that had the same restrictions. So, and then looking at the timing of when things had to be spent. So if you want to elaborate on that at all, Joel, or add your comments.
I was thinking of something and I kind of said from, what was the?
So restricted funds like title funds that we've amassed, my question was, do we amass it because we were providing the services but not properly charging into the title funds, or because we weren't providing the services?
That's a good question. So we do have one thing about our restricted funds. I gave an example. We elected to do Title I, and we budgeted the night school, like credit recovery, and we budgeted summer school. And those were challenging to budget and see through the exact actuals because the night school was built and had to get students to attend and then hire teachers. So I don't know if, and then in a summer school similarity, you know, you plan for the biggest summer school, but then in actuality, what actually happens? I think those are some challenging things to budget. So I think we anticipated a really larger night school program. We anticipated a very large summer school program, and then I think we did a great job. I can't speak on, but I think that's kind of one example of. And then similarly, they have a lot of it is supplemental work for teachers and staff doing work, and then that's going to land some challenges of spending the full budget. You know, things come up, and so I would say that's a lot of our restricted grants. Another component of that is a lot of the grants are discretionary to school sites. Like for example, they have a large 9,000 local reserve accounts, and we work with them to budget like how they're going to spend throughout the year with their donations and their some of those sites. And because they're more site defined, we have less communication with those sites to know exactly what they're going to do. And we let they say, well, you know, we have these charges to spend those, and then sometimes it just doesn't fully come to the end of the year that way. I actually do think we do a good job of identifying the spending restricted grants first. And I just think it just, the year goes by and it gets busy and things come up and yeah.
It's an open-ended question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's always, I think we do better now than we have in some of the previous years of really identifying restricted grants and giving great administration over those grants and spending them down. Yeah. Oh, another one that is, I would say, one that we could take into factor was what I consider a great program, but an extremely challenging program is the Prop 28 music, where we have these very large budgets, we have these very large allocations that our schools, another school site defined where they have to be very involved with school. The charge behind the grant and the grant writers was to give those to the school sites to do that work, and sometimes it can be really hard for school sites because they're so overwhelmed already. So that was one of the budgets that kind of we saw. They have a 3-year carryover, so we budget 1 year and then it carries over the next year. So yeah.
Are we losing any money?
Well, I mean, we're doing darnest not to. We really have a great time. I got my hat goes off to Lisa Haley and the Ed Services program, all the principals, all the staff, and you know, my fiscal department budget technicians managing those budgets, and the HR department hiring all those and separating those into those separate grants. It's unlike any other grant we've ever had, I think. But that is one restriction program. It's a fairly large dollar amount that you're going to see the budgets because you have to charge all the way up in the year, and then we true up on those. And that's every school.
I think I'm probably in line with what you're already thinking, but we need to manage our I feel like in the conversation, especially last year around closures, we got to a place where we're kind of saying, oh, well, that's restricted funds. But it doesn't remove our fiduciary obligation to be managing the restricted funds well and making sure they're going to the highest and best use. So is a sense of what I'm getting from you and pointing that dollar amount out that you're going to be looking at deploying it.
Yes, I'm a stickler on a dollar is a dollar, whether it's restricted or it's unrestrictable. I always prefer an unrestricted dollar, yes, but a dollar is a dollar, and I think for where we are today, everything is on the table. Even if we're currently using a restricted dollar, if there's an opportunity to choose otherwise, to not spend it one way and instead shift over something from the unrestricted side, I think we have to look at all of those possibilities. And just I don't want anything to get lost in translation. I'm not proposing anything that's going to be easy. So this is going to be hard, and it's still going to hurt even if it's a shift. But it's, I believe at this point, everything needs to be on the table. In order to restore a 3% reserve, in order to eliminate that structural deficit, everything has to be on the table.
I've been telling people that, and I don't want this to come off wrong because it's to emphasize how difficult this year's will be, but I've been telling people that last year's decisions were easy compared to what this year's, because last year's didn't involve not doing things that we currently do. It was just where we're doing them. And while that was difficult for the community, and obviously there's a lot of transition and issues that came from those decisions, fundamentally, it was the easier decision because we were still doing the things for the kids. And this year, we're gonna have to make choices that are about not doing things.
Yeah.
So we might have a few less people at meetings in the public from it, but the impact is gonna probably be more significant.
Yes, I often say in positions at this level, I accept that no matter what recommendation I make, no matter what decision I make, I'm gonna get yelled at. And so if I'm gonna get yelled at, I'm gonna get yelled at for doing what I believe is the right thing.
I have one question. So it kind of sounded, some of these restricted funds, that's done at the site level. So as part of the issue, are we supporting principals in how they manage that? Are we holding
I believe
principals?
with the restriction, there is a large amount of support. It's,
Okay.
like I said, we've never had a grant like that before where they have to be, where the laws of the grant are specific for the sites to take discretion and do those things. And I can't speak on what it's like to be able to do that, but it seems complicated to me, if you ask me. It's like knowing that it's such a drastic challenge. Well, I do believe they're doing great work.
Yeah, they've worked really, really closely with, I know, the fiscal team and with Elisa Haley. She's worked really closely with each of the sites with their Prop 28 plans. And the thing to remember about Prop 28, there's a couple things. One, we can't supplant. So it has to only be adding things. And since Santa Rosa City Schools already had strong arts programs, we're actually at a disadvantage for spending those dollars. And also 80% has to be spent on staff, and only 1% of that remaining 20% can be spent on any type of administration. Yeah, so we don't get the indirect off of that, like we do on other grants. And then 19% can be spent on equipment and contracts and stuff. So it's harder for them to spend those dollars.
What about Title I? Is that decided at the site level?
That is mostly decided at the district level now, as far as positions, ongoing positions. That was something that we made a change this year because we had issues in the way that was done in the past, being able to monitor that. So that's one of the big reasons why we made that change. And then the sites do have some discretionary Title I, to use for the appropriate purposes. But the staffing piece of it, aside from extra things, like they can pay for tutoring or, extra things with their site funds. But the ongoing Title I staff is done at the district level and then assigned to the appropriate sites.
So it sounds like the site level component is much smaller, but are we checking in that sites are spending that out completely every year? Is there?
Say that's more what is happening this year than what's happened in the past. Our team's gotten really
I think that is fair. With the title is set up to have a school allocation amount that this current year, the closed year, 24-25, that was, we did give them their allocations. They've been doing that every year for years, where they budget that, we work their school site councils, they create their SIPSs. But the title funding is the most restrictive funding. It is the hardest funding to spend. And do they all spend out 100%? No. So that is why that is part of the thing that Roderick and his team worked on, saying, okay, we want to relook at how we do this, and they did do it. And Lisa worked on changing that to this new year. So hopefully we'll see less of that out of the title funds. Yeah. Because of that.
For follow-up to this committee, a Prop 28 spending analysis by site I think it's something we should receive in the future. As we're, I mean, probably
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah, like I said, we worked really good with Lisa Haley. She kept on our finance team and said, no, those aren't good enough financial documents for our schools, and our, her administrative team worked, so she worked with our department to create, and my hat goes off to her because I was like, that's good enough, I can read that. And now I think we have a pretty, really, state-of-the-art, like whatever the word is, document that we can show that. So yeah, we should be able to produce those fairly, yeah,
I mean,
and
you know, I'm saying in the context of, I know it's new funding, it's essentially onboarding during this period of cutting that we're having to do. And one of the things that we very clearly have been hearing through consolidation and now through today is the importance around arts and music programs. So, you know, I don't have any prejudgment on what that document's going to tell us, but making sure that we're effectively spending it, and even within its restrictions of it having to be new programs, we have to offer a new program to make sure there's art on the campus, even if it means we have to cut an old one. It's the unfortunate reality of our funding.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, and having added, this could be a great silver lining opportunity for that program to take the next step, yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
Anyone else have anything else on the other actions?
I just want to say thank you. I know that it's a huge lift, and I know that the care that is taken to make that happen, I just know that it was a lot, and thank you. I mean, the percentage differences, you know, say it all, and that's a consistency that I've seen since coming here, to the level of detail in the work that happens in our fiscal team.
Well, I appreciate it. I know even Emmanuel, he was talking about, we were talking about that. I mean, everybody plays such a big component, or a big part of that, like, getting, he really was almost fully responsible for the third interim update in their enrollment, just to put him in, and like, I meant to say that to him while I was here, like.
No, I mean,
We have a rock star team as far as that, we really, really do.
for the entire team, though, I mean,
Yeah.
last year I think we were off a bit on being slightly over enrolled in elementary, and the projections from 24 months ago to now, these projections were, we're counting dozens of students' differences across tens of thousands for our projections. You know, every presentation today proved how accurate the data is coming from the team and how much we can trust it all. So I wish it was telling me we had 20 million extra instead of 2 million extra. So if you want to be wrong in that direction, let me know. But the accuracy makes it, you know, as a board member, being able to read it and know that you know, I mean, still projections, I know, but that the projections are always within such a small target range is just very impressive.
Well, and this is really the time of year when you do see the accuracy, because it's how close were we from where we estimated 3 months ago that we were going to end to where we actually ended up. And because this is the one time a year, I'll say this all the time, this is one time a year our numbers are real. The rest of the time it's all a guess. And so this is the product of the hard work. And the other piece I want to commend our team on is the collaboration between between ed services and business, you know, with everybody really, and HR, you know, aligning to make sure that we are all working in the same direction. That helps us to tighten that up hugely. So really helps us to be a more effective and efficient organization, and to really build that trust with each other, and then from there our community.
Thank you. Yeah, and John Fisher, special.
Yes, special services, all just across all of it. Thank
All
you.
year he's been
Yes.
involved in the finance.
Yeah, there's been
Such a challenge.
huge improvements over the last, you know, just incrementally over the last few years. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you all. I do want to say it's not on the agenda today, but we completed the board retreat number 5 strategic priorities set by the board in that. So we will be bringing to this committee's agenda in the future discussion around those, their relevance to our committee work, and what we're going to be putting into our work plan in order to advance those 5 strategic priorities. So that'll be starting up at our next committee meeting. And we do have the terms and budget process information under our informational items, as well as our upcoming subcommittee meeting schedule. So if folks need to access that, it's on the agenda. With that, we'll go to approval of the minutes for the meeting held on August 11th, 2025.
Was I here?
I'm double checking right now.
I believe it was me.
So, yes.
I remember I checked it the other day.
Yes.
Move to approve?
Second. Any objection? No objection. The minutes are approved. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 5:27 p.m.
Woo, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye-bye.
Joel.